Building a 1960s-inspired supercar is enough to make anyone turn into an animal. We haven't seen Ryan in a while, and I'm starting to worry. Definitely signs that he has been in the area. We must be on the right trail. I'm going to use the natural cover so I don't spook him. My best attempt to imitate his call. Ow! I think he spotted me.
What are you guys doing?
Nothing.
We've been working on the sheet metal on the rear end of Jigsaw, and right now we have one panel roughed in. The challenge is trying to make sure these panels actually fit accurately to the tubing that's on the chassis of Jigsaw. So this week I will continue making paneling for the rear end of our car.
We built our aluminum tubing as a structure for a clamshell, which is an iconic feature on many 60s supercars. Not only is this tubing the structure for our clamshell, it also defines the shape. And since Ryan's gonna be all over this thing, we need it to be solid for him to be able to do his work. So I'm gonna build a hinge, just like we did on the front of the car, to lock this in.
I wasn't that rough the last time, Tony. I always throw scissors first. Last week when I made this panel, I tried to make it go the entire way up here and ended up cutting it in half. The reason I cut it in half was because I was having trouble with the shrinking. We're using Eastwood's new prototype hammer. I say new, but it's a prototype that they do not sell yet. And I had problems with it readjusting itself and not shrinking properly. Well, at the end of last week's video, I ended up getting it to shrink correctly so I could move forward efficiently with the hammer now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to rework this panel to make it actually work the way I wanted it to curve down over here so we get our nice hip. And then after that, I'd like to dig into the back end down here and kind of get this whole quarter panel fleshed out and see how it looks in one solid fashion and not made out of aluminum foil. Let's get hammering. Now we're moving in the right direction. The shrinker is working much better now. If you're new here, the shrinker creates folds in the panel, and then when I pull it back through again, it flattens those folds into themselves, shrinking the surface area. So it's both thickening the panel, but shrinking the surface area. And shrinking the surface area is what we need to do to get this thing to curve in on itself. I'm gonna run it a little bit more up here to get it to suck down a little bit more up top, and then we can start wheeling and planishing. Look at that. I know to you guys, it's like, that looks very rough. Why aren't you just doing pie cuts and welding it and you skipping to the end? Well, I don't want to. I'm shrinking this. We have the technology, we're gonna use it. And it is, I mean, look at the inside of this, Kyle. Look at down there, look at this, look at this. Look how nicely it's coming along the tubing, and that's just a little bit of shrinking. I still got a ways to go, obviously, but it's amazing when your tooling's set up right what you can do.
So I grabbed the original bumper shocks for this car, and I'm gonna fit them in here. And if you're watching, you probably already know what I'm about to tell you, which is they're too long. So what I'm looking at doing is collapsing these bumper shocks. I really want to use them. It's a great way I can bolt on to this without having to do any fabrication on this longitudinal frame rail. After that, we can build a bumper. We can use this as the mounting point for our structure that will come down here and tie into our transverse frame member that we're building here. The primary purpose for these shock absorbers are low speed impact, so I'm not really worried about that. Plus, I need it in a collapsed position for it to even fit on the car. I'm just gonna drill that and get rid of that feature of these bumper shocks.
This might get interesting. Is it gonna blow up when he does that?
I seem to be drilling forever, so I'm gonna try and come in from the side. I'm gonna get started, then I'm gonna move out of the way.
I'm wondering if inside this is not gas or fluid, but instead some solid material. Because when he was drilling, there's like plastic coming out of it. Maybe it's just like a big chunk of rubbery plastic that compresses. I don't know. I know one way to find out though. I win. Oh, the air's not on. We didn't turn the air on this morning.
There was never a winner or a loser, it's an experiment. If you're going in hoping for one outcome or the other, you're going to mess up the experiment.
No, you.
Science, it rules. It's going. It's working!
It's working!
It might
Oh,
be,
it's going back up.
Yeah. This is what's coming out. So it's got a material that just kind of, there's a material that just smooshes and pushes out of the way.
So my guess was right then.
It's at this point, that's as far as we can go. I don't know if we need to go farther. That seems to be about as far as it wants to go.
That looks nice, Tony.
Yeah.
It's nice when the manufacturer's recommendations are actually right for the
Settings.
of material and settings. Good job.
Thanks, Ryan.
Now kiss.
I think with this one, I'm going to try not drill anything. When we collapsed this one, the material didn't come out of any of the drilled holes anyway. It all came out of the end. I've never drilled into a Boxster bumper shock before because there was never a reason to. Back in the day, guys would do exactly what we did, and usually oil would come out, and then they'd collapse these, and that was just to get rid of the big diving board bumpers on the front of the early impact cars. On a Boxster, the only reason you ever do anything with these is to throw them away after an accident. Can you see anything squeezing out on that side?
Nope.
That's the spot. This bumper shock expanded a lot more quickly after I took the pressure off of it. So there might be something in here. I'm gonna drill the hole just in case because I'm about to add a whole bunch of heat. So this one exploded all over me.
Goodness. It's like a white powder.
When I would take it out of the press, it kept expanding. Every time it would just come back to full expansion, which this one didn't do. I'm thinking maybe the first one was already dead, had been collapsed or something, because that never happened.
Are they the same part number? Yeah, they are.
I think that one was already dead for one reason or another. Maybe it already took an impact.
Yeah.
Glad I had these.
It's
on.
funny because the other times we had like 2 cameras running at once. We were excited, ready for something to happen. And then he just does this off camera and then it happens. So, classic Tony. You have like white stuff on your face. Let's smooth this bad boy out and see what it looks like. A little bit of lubrication. Squint your ears, Kyle.
It's so loud!
Look at that. She's lumpy, but she's coming together. This video has been paid for and sponsored by Armra. When trying to keep up in the shop and in my home life and everything else, it is tough to keep up with my own physical health, which is why I'm excited to have simplified my wellness routine with Armra Colostrum. Colostrum is a dairy bioactive whole food produced by mammals in the first 48 to 72 hours after giving birth. It is the first nutrition that we receive and contains vital nutrients that our body needs to survive. I've been taking 3 scoops of Armra every day and I feel great. Armra delivers the power of colostrum to us in a digestible form of over 400 functional nutrients like peptides, antibodies, and antioxidants that support your cells, gut, immune system, and so much more. These nutrients have been shown to fuel performance, recovery, and increase lean muscle mass and tissue repair. 3 to 4 scoops is recommended, but because it's a bioactive whole food, you can up your scoops as much as you please. We've worked out a special offer for you guys. Receive 15% off your first order. Go to tryarmra.com/crucible or enter code CRUCIBLE to get 15% off your first order. That's tryarmra.com/crucible. Huge thanks to Armra for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check them out. Sponsorships like this keep our channel rolling. Let's get back to work. That hip does not lie. Look at that. Like, I'm not even like forcing it in shape, and it's doing pretty good. That is what we're looking for a rough-in, anyway. So now that this front hip piece is roughed in and I'm enjoying how it's flowing, there's some glaring things about the rear piece I don't like, mainly right here where it's kind of like a little low and flat, where it should kind of flow nicely into the hip. So we're gonna do some adjustments to this piece now that I have my tooling set up nicely and get it to flow a little bit better. That's much better. And this low spot's now no longer existent. I'm not gonna worry too much about how, we got this gap here, because we're just roughly fitting things together.
So now the bumper shock is collapsed and welded in place. It's much better, much shorter. So we're gonna cut the bottom of this tube off just to give us as much clearance as possible between that and the body, and then I can move forward with my other fabrication. Now we got plenty of clearance. So now I want to fabricate a rear bumper similar to the one we put together for the front. And this is how we attached it. Well, we spent all that time cutting the bottom of this off, and now that I've got this block made up, this is getting pretty close, so we're gonna knock that corner off too at the same time as we weld this tube in.
Don't think I can't see you two talking about me while I'm hammering. They're both, Tony's going like this, pointing at me. I think what he's saying is he's happy I'm hammering all day so that he doesn't have to listen to me talk all day. And I think it's true.
It's not exactly what I was saying. I was just saying, I said that you were noisy. It doesn't matter whether you're working or just talking.
Still true. Screw you. So now that the top of the hip is sorted, it's time to work our way down the side because I'd like to see this whole torpedo shape actually being in metal and not aluminum foil or just some floating tubing. Yeah, so I'm gonna take our aluminum foil pattern we already made here, we're gonna lay it out and cut it out some aluminum, and then we're gonna figure out how we're gonna shape this, because at first glance, I'm not really sure, but we'll figure it out. Just float it like that. See, this is why we left the foil on this side of the car. So I can pull patterns off it. Get out of here. Nobody wants you. All right, piece is cut out. It's gonna start here, and it's got the curve around to there, and then also have additional shape to be curvy. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to roll this around. I mean, we could try bending over my knee to get started, maybe. I could also try like clamping it to the frame and then kind of forcing it over on itself, but I don't really want to tweak the frame any more than I already have. I've gotten a little too, well, I admit to nothing. I did nothing wrong. Tony's the one who's wrong. However, maybe I'll use a slip roll. If I figured out exactly where the rays are going from here out to here-ish for the curve, I could try to use a slip roll to at least get started. I don't know, we'll figure that out. Ow, frick, oh, God. My funny bone. It's not funny when it happens. Ah! My idea is I'm gonna use the English wheel to bend the panel over. So we're gonna use a nice round over die like this. Let's see what happens. Hey, I didn't drop it that time. Don't worry guys, I've seen your comments and your concern about my health. I've decided to stop drinking Red Bull. We could dance if you want to. We could leave your friends behind. Why would you leave your friends behind dancing?
Because they don't dance.
And if they don't dance,
They
Tony,
ain't no
do you
friends
dance?
of mine.
Hold on, let me take my time.
This is a Karmann Ghia, but actually it's not. It's a 2000 Boxster S. The idea behind it was to build an exceptionally performing Ghia convertible that drove and ran like a modern car with air conditioning, an automatic transmission, safe, fun, reliable, some of the things that a Ghia is not. This was a customer project. He commissioned it for his wife as a surprise present, which he revealed to her at SEMA in 2012 when we finished it.
So this is literal living, driving proof that we can rebody a Porsche Boxster into something completely different, and it actually works. We take this car to shows and people go, that's a nice looking Karmann Ghia. I've never seen one that nice before. And then I go, wait a minute, something's a little off. But it doesn't click right away. Now, Project Jigsaw is also based on the same generation Porsche Boxster. And we're doing things a little bit different with Jigsaw. Jigsaw, we've cut down a good bit more, I'd say, than you guys did with the Karmann Ghia. Now, the front end of Jigsaw is a little bit similar in the fact that we did a center radiator. Instead of the two radiators on either side with each wheel, it's in the center right here.
One thing that differs on this car is on the Ghia, we had to chop the front of the chassis off so that the profile of the car would match the Ghia. In the case of Jigsaw, the chassis is still full length in the front, But as Ryan mentioned, we did a center radiator on both, and in both cases because the two side-mounted radiators would not match the profile of the body we were building.
You'll also notice on the Ghia here, this back edge is pretty familiar because it is the Boxster profile on the door edge. And when you open it up, we have the Boxster door jamb. On Project Jigsaw, we're trying to avoid that to make it even less identifiable as a Porsche Boxster. Also, the carbon Ghia is a steel body. It's not fiberglass, and Jigsaw is an aluminum body. So hand-formed steel, hand-formed aluminum. I like pointing over here, you can see the car, but really it's just Tony standing here.
I am not hand-formed aluminum.
You could be.
Just like on the Boxster, we needed air inlets to go to the engine. These, however, were made before we had 3D printers, and so we had to make the custom surround out of fiberglass, and these are aluminum slats out of another grill. A lot more work when we didn't have 3D printers. These tires are tucked so nicely.
We also retained the convertible top from the Boxster for the Ghia, whereas on Jigsaw, it's not going to be convertible. We're going for a target top that'll bolt in up top, or clip in, however we end up doing it. And you know, we'll have a back glass and stuff instead of this. I don't like the Boxster convertible top very much. Fits this car just fine, but not Jigsaw.
I actually love the Boxster convertible top. Not for this project, but it is very sublime in its operation. And that's one of the reasons it works so well for this project.
It is probably the best operating convertible top I've ever worked on in all the cars I've worked on. I will give it that.
Yep.
I just don't like the way it looks. So it's a new day. There's two things. The first thing is I got new shoes because, well, Kyle shamed me on the camera yesterday and my pinky toe was hanging out, and that's the whole thing. The second thing is last time we worked on this car, I wanted to make this whole hip in one piece. And I couldn't do it because, well, I thought I was not skilled enough, but really was because the hammer wasn't dialed in right. And now that it's shrinking great, I think I want to try again. So we're going to pull the foil off of this side. I'm going to use the template that we already used on the other side, cut it out of some aluminum, and we're going to begin hammering and shaping to see if I can do this whole hip in one piece. Look, I even have this labeled as driver hip because I wanted to try again. And I knew it last time when I got this panel out. Going in. Pretty close. So it's shrinking a lot better right now, but you'll notice something. Right now, as you get closer to the edges of the panel, you'll notice it ripples a lot. The reason that's happening is because I am doing shrinks in straight lines like this, right? Here's every pass I've done, just like that. It's about the spacing I'm doing right now. What's important is if you're like bowling something by shrinking it, it's incremental. So the way I was taught was think of it like pizza slices. So if I'm going along a radius along here, if I shrink, if I cut it down to like triangles, like pizza slices, like so, you'll notice that to the inside, it's a lot thinner, right? And then as you get further out, the piece gets wider. That means that it gets more shrink to the outside. So what I'm gonna have to do is, I'm gonna do a pass up to this line, right? Then I'm gonna do another pass from here up to about here. Then I'm gonna do a third pass up to about there, and a fourth pass about there. That's gonna be incremental to the end, and that's gonna get rid of the way it's splaying out and lifting up and not cooperating. But for now, it's gonna be ugly and it's gonna look really bad until I go incrementally through and shrink it. But yeah, if you think of it as like pizza slices, it makes a bit more sense. The wider the pizza slice, the more shrink it needs. Not a tool in our shop unless he's got a googly eye. Now that I have a good bit of shrink in this, I still have a ways to go, but it's a little hard to read because the rest of the panel does not have any shape in it whatsoever. So we're gonna jump onto the planishing hammer here, and I'm gonna start building this hip up, because it's gonna be about half shrink, half stretch. That's the goal. It's going a lot better than it did last week. Well, 2 weeks ago, I guess it was.
We've got our bumper tacked together. We've got our rear suspension brace tacked together. And my plan was to tie between the two and give us a place to hang the hinge from. Everything I'm coming up with is ending up in the wrong place and getting very bulky and heavy and overcomplicated. So I've decided to make a bracket specific for our hinge to hang from. And I made this template that will sit up in here. We're gonna make a little box section that's gonna come down here and just give us a nice little spot to hang our hinge pin from. So now let's go do that. I know what I want the shape of this to be, but I want it to be a boxed section. So I made a template that shows all of that. There's the two sides, there's the spine, a little flange, so I got something to weld to the trunk. And we're gonna add some dimple dies to add some rigidity and take out some weight with these guys. But I think I wanna do this in CAD and cut it out on the plasma table to speed up this process. Ryan, go get the laptop. Just use my template, laid out where a couple of my bends are going to be. So we're going to go over to the sheet metal brake and bend it. So our holes are almost big enough for the bolt hole to go through, so we gotta dress that up a little bit. And you may have noticed one of these holes is larger than the other. It's actually for the smaller die. So the really small dies, there's not enough space in here to have a punch tool as well. So we cut the hole to the actual finish hole size, which is that size. So that will fit right in there, and then we can just dimple die it. Didn't punch yet. There it is.
Tony's gonna need some bushings for his rear clamshell. On the front clamshell hinge, we 3D printed bushings to go between the aluminum tubing and the steel tubing that basically make up the hinge. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have the file still on here. Quick plug, Neptune 4 Max, amazing printer. I love this thing. This is probably like best bang for buck for like a slightly larger printer. At least when I got it, it was. Obviously, if you wanna go bigger, we have this thing over here, but don't film that. That's for next week's video.
All right, so I'm working on getting this attached. I'm gonna have to clean up the underside a little bit. I'm also gonna have to change this flange a little bit to match the terrain of the bottom of this trunk. But one thing I was dealing with is it's rocking like this, and I was trying to figure out what I had to do about that. And when I figured out what was going on, this floor of the trunk is dented. And I'm like, why would the trunk of this floor be dented? And then it occurred to me, we just posted a video clip of Ryan jumping up and down in the back of the trunk when we finished the suspension.
Is that what it is? I was upstairs in the office editing, and Tony's like, you need to come down here right now, I need to show you something. Well, I'm not showing it to you until the camera's turned on. That's really funny. You think it's from that?
These trunks, when, you know, it's a complete car.
I can see it. I can see it from here.
Yeah. I got to straighten that out. And then I've got another thing that occurred to me. I was going to weld our hinge pin in here, sticking out that way, and have this welded to the bottom of the car. And then I remembered what we did in the front, because if this is fixed, unable to be removed from the car, the clamshell won't come off. So when I had my uh-oh moment about this hinge pin, I was happy to realize that the solution I think is pretty simple. I am going to cut this corner out on both sides, and then I can fold this piece over, weld it here, box it in, and then I've got a place to bolt my hinge pin to. Easy peasy. Easy peasy. What am I, Ryan? Ugh. I'm getting my money's worth out of this wheel. So now that that's all welded up, I need to make a flange that's going to be welded to this pipe, and then this pin will bolt to the end of this, and that will allow us to remove our clamshell if we need to, and when we need to. So this bracket is upside down from the way it will be sitting in the car, but this is what we need to make. This is our hinge pin, and then the other piece of the hinge will be welded to the clamshell. Now all I have to do is put some holes in here so we can bolt this to that, and then more importantly, so we can unbolt this from that whenever we need to take the clamshell off.
So I did not get to finish the panel this week like I wanted to. However, it's not because I gave up on it, it's because I've been working on next week's video, and it's gonna be a big surprise and you don't wanna miss it.
Thanks for hanging in the shop with us.